Welcome back to Light in the Battle, a podcast where we talk about autism, single motherhood, and trauma recovery. My name is Faustina. I'm a single autistic mom, late diagnosed. I'm raising an autistic PDA child. I'm healing from narcissistic abuse, going through legal abuse, and I'm winning in court. I've created this podcast to share the tips and tricks that have been a game changer for me in every challenging area of my life, and I hope that can help you too. You can find me on Facebook at Light in the Battle. I'm currently still available to chat openly if you need some more perspective on your situation. I've got some free time where I do that. Today's episode is the first episode of season 3. I built an entire season 2 about emotional detachment. Those were episodes 15A to 28, and I covered all the steps that I walked in order to detach completely emotionally and become that much more impactful and powerful in court. For season 3, I want to talk about how now that we've covered the higher level strategic angle of why it's important to detach emotionally, in season 3, I want to go into more practical day-to-day regulation concepts, because it's one thing to go through the internal transformation of detachment, but now I want to help you regulate in your daily functioning and help you with your daily stability in the face of all the challenges that you're dealing with. So we start today with why high conflict co-parenting dysregulates autistic women so bad. And I would trust that a lot of what I'm going to say here also applies to neurotypicals. The first thing I want to mention is that high conflict co-parenting is a very unnatural environment for anyone, and especially for autistic people. Our brains were not designed for constant ambiguity, for conflict with no resolution. We weren't designed to have to interact with unsafe people, and we certainly weren't designed to have to deal with uncertainty about our kids. And autistic brains especially struggle with all the things that you find in high conflict co-parenting, which is the unpredictability, the inconsistency, the unclear motives, and the double meanings in your co-parents' communication. And so your nervous system experiences the current environment as unsafe and unpredictable. And that environment won't change anytime soon. And that's why I'm here to help. The second thing is that autistic women actually need safety to function more than neurotypicals. We have a brain that thrives on routine, predictability, emotional safety, controlled environments. We need those more than neurotypicals do. And high conflict dynamics destroy all of the above. You've got zero routine, zero predictability, zero emotional safety, and the environment is completely out of control. And so the nervous system never fully relaxes because it's responding to an environment that it experiences as unsafe and unpredictable. So the body starts expecting danger constantly. And you can see that if you're carrying PTSD, you'll be dealing with hypervigilance, bracing yourself constantly when you get a notification on your phone, scanning if you're back into an environment where you may have spent time with the co-parent, you'll be scanning for danger. You may also be overthinking communication, ruminating whatever happened at this hearing or that hearing. That can also look like rereading emails 20 times, feeling that sense of freezing it's one of the four F's. You've got the fight, the flight, the freeze, and the fawn. You might sometimes feel like you're freezing before exchanges with the other parent. And in a lot of mothers' cases, I'm also hearing an inability to relax when the child is away. All of that is your nervous system responding the way it is wired to, from a place of trauma to an environment that it experiences as unsafe and unpredictable. Because co-parenting conflict, it invades everything. We're not just talking about, and this is something that people sitting on the sidelines and looking at the situation from the outside can never understand. We're not just talking about a legal issue. This isn't, my neighbor's tree fell into my yard and busted the fence, and now we're going to court to figure out who's going to pay for the fence and who's going to retrieve the wood. No, we're talking about a legal battle that is going to be spanning for years, and that involves people making decisions about your life that don't even know you. It's very scary. And that's going to affect your sleep, your digestion. Some women end up with chronic illness. The sensory tolerance, in my case, was all messed up. I became even more sensitive to sound than I had always been before. It affects your capacity to work. So you're lucky if you have an understanding boss or understanding clients, because your ability to work is going to be impacted by a long-term legal battle if you're not regulated. It affects your parenting bandwidth. It's a lot easier to want to take the kids to the park and have fun on Saturday, or want to have certain conversations with the kids that are relevant to their age, or want to answer certain questions that they're asking properly because you've got the bandwidth to think about how you're going to approach this or that. It's a lot easier to do all of that when you're regulated. And so that long drawn legal battle is going to impact your parenting bandwidth as well. And then you start feeling guilty for snapping, et cetera, et cetera. So that's awesome. And it also affects in autistic people, what I'm seeing a lot is that prolonged humongous stress affects our executive functioning, and we can end up in autistic burnout. Again, because the nervous system is responding to an environment that it experiences as unsafe and unpredictable. Now, under stress, prolonged stress, extreme stress, all the more, autistic women will often mask, which is an autism specific term for fawning. What neurotypicals will experience as fawning, to us, we've done it our whole lives. It's masking. So we'll be over explaining ourselves, something I touched upon in episode 30. We'll try to appease so that we're not rejected and there's not so much conflict and misunderstandings in our lives. We'll try to fix communication. Everything I just mentioned, there's 3 traits: over explaining, appeasing, and trying to fix communication and fix others. These are actually codependent traits. We discussed those in season 2 in episodes 20 to 22. But I want to keep this episode more high level today. Another thing that autistic women are going to experience under stress is emotional exhaustion after interactions. I mentioned autistic burnout earlier, and we'll talk about it later in this season. But for now, you may want to listen to a bonus episode that I created that came right before episode 25. It's an autistic burnout meditation. I hope it helps. It's one of my biggest episodes. It's the one that is getting the most downloads because I don't think a lot of content creators have thought of us, have thought about us in autistic burnout. And so I had created this meditation for myself initially, and then I figured, why not put it on the podcast? And from the numbers I'm seeing, it does look like it's helping people. It comes right before episode 25 if you look at the list of episodes. Sorry, giant sidebar. So these are all the things that we deal with as autistic women under stress. Okay, the codependent traits come flaring up, the over-explaining, appeasing, and trying to fix the communication and control the other. And then there's the emotional exhaustion after the interactions. Before I move on to my next point, quick reminder that you can find me on Facebook at Light in the Battle. You're very welcome to DM me on there because I'm available to give you some perspective on your situation. I've been doing it for free for several survivors for a while, and I still have some free time to keep helping moms one at a time. So feel free to reach out to me on Facebook at Light in the Battle, and maybe even follow the page so you can see the tidbits that I drop every now and then. Now, the nervous system stops distinguishing between minor and major stress after a while. So, whatever crazy nonsense was happening during the relationship with this person, there have been several occurrences of major stress, even maybe threats to your life or threats to your kids. And these were major stress that the nervous system is wired to respond to with one of the 4 Fs: freeze, fawn, flight, or fight. But over time, after you've separated and you're physically safe from this person, other than cases of stalking, obviously, but in cases where you're physically safe from this person, even the minor stresses are going to start being interpreted by the nervous system as just as serious as the major stresses. So again, it's the notifications on the phone. This is something that we all have in common. The phone goes bloop bloop and your nervous system goes, holy fuck, we're under attack, what's going on? The reaction from the nervous system is 10 times what it should really be once you get to a place of regulation. And once it's easy for me to say now that I've done the journey, and I want you to get to that point where it no longer triggers that very, very strong reaction. But for now, you may very well be in a place where the phone beeping sends you for a loop because your nervous system doesn't really know the difference between the major stress that you've been through with this person and a minor bloop bloop from your phone, which means that you got a text from this person. A text will send you into a spiral. Now, the problem with being so dysregulated, I'm trying to set the stage here for the rest of this season. The reason it's so crucial to not be so dysregulated is that we have to stop reacting impulsively to things. If we're dysregulated, we see our communication deteriorate and we're no longer in control of what we say to this person, especially in writing. You look unstable in the eyes of the judge. That's not so great. You burn yourself out if you stay dysregulated for too long. You cannot create and sustain a legal strategy which is going to be spanning several years because each hearing is one move on the chessboard. And so you have to have a very long-term strategy and be able to understand it, apply it, and sustain it. You can't do that if you're dysregulated. And the demand and the pressure, it can just become overwhelming. And so that link between the importance of detaching emotionally, regulating, and all that, and your legal strategy is something that that was really the core of season 2. But here I'm still setting the stage for season 3, where we look more at, okay, this is a great, high level plan, but how do I survive the dysregulation on a day-to-day basis? Okay. So everything I've mentioned here, these are the reasons, and the reasons that your nervous system is responding this way with examples of what that can look like. If this hits home, the reason it hits home is because it's the same pattern that I'm hearing in every woman that I talk to, whether it's in real life, in the group of survivors that I'm a member of, or it's the women that come and talk to me on Facebook, or it's friends. I end up getting phone calls sometimes from people that got my number through a friend of a friend, and the story is always the same. What they feel in their body when they're supposed to be meeting the co-parent for an exchange, for example, on Sunday, the way they feel and what they describe, it's always the same in every survivor. And so if you're listening to this and it hits home, I want you to know that your nervous system isn't broken. It's not acting weird. You're not being weird, and you're not being overly reactive. It's got nothing to do with you as a person. It's not a character flaw. Okay, it's you actually having a very healthy, very normal, initially very healthy, very normal nervous system that is reacting and has been reacting for a long time exactly the way it was supposed to, just like in everybody else's case. Okay. And the good news, and the reason I'm doing all of this work for free, is that I want you to understand that regulation can be learned. You've been trained either because you're autistic and you've been dealing with conflict and people rejecting you your whole life, or because you had a shitty childhood and you were abused emotionally or physically as a kid, or because of the dysfunctional relationship with your co-parent. Your nervous system has been trained to become the mess that it is today. And there really wasn't a million ways that it was going to respond to that prolonged stress, that and even that PTSD or CPTSD. Everything I've described in this episode is what it was naturally supposed to, how it was naturally going to start behaving. But it can also be trained the other way. So you can take a healthy nervous system and mess it up and become whatever you feel that you've become today. And you can also do it the other way around. You can take someone who's completely shattered, reacts very strongly to minor stimuli, and ruminates and goes through all of that. And you can train that nervous system back to regulation and safety, even within the battle, even in the battle, because your legal situation isn't going to go away anytime soon. So you have to find ways to regulate and be joyful and hopeful and healthy again and happy today. And you can. You can. It can be learned. Your nervous system can learn this stuff. That's why this podcast exists. That's why you clicked on this episode. And so make sure to follow the podcast so you can keep coming back for the rest of this season. I'm just setting the stage here for the rest of season 3. Okay? If high conflict co-parenting feels like it's consuming your entire nervous system, there are reasons for that. Your nervous system is reacting the way it is supposed to. And in this season 3, it's about learning how to stabilize, how to become regulated again and stay regulated throughout the day and throughout the exchanges with our co-parent inside the high conflict co-parenting situation in the battle. Thank you for being here today. I look forward to talking to you again in the next episode. Make sure to follow so we can go through the entire plan that I've designed for this season together. And if you're in the thick of it, as always, please remember that this life is something you may have to take one day at a time. Your only job today is to stay standing until bedtime. You look no farther. And you'll do that again tomorrow and the day after until the fog starts to lift. We'll talk to you soon.